The bowl ban has been lifted, but can Ole Miss get to the postseason in 2019? Find out here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.
Ole Miss is looking to make their first bowl game since 2015, now that the bowl ban has been lifted. And Matt Luke showed his dedication to that, making two huge coaching hires in the offseason, bringing in former Arizona head coach Rich Rodriguez as offensive coordinator and former Colorado head coach Mike MacIntyre as defensive coordinator. And those two guys will make an immediate impact for the Rebels in 2019, but will it be enough to get them to the postseason? Unfortunately for Ole Miss, they only returned 3 starters on offense. And over recent years, we know that Ole Miss has had some very potent offensive attacks. But Jordan Ta'amu, their quarterback, is gone. DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown are both gone to the NFL. So now it is up to Redshirt Freshman quarterback Matt Corral to build some chemistry with a fairly new crew of wide receivers. And however, how quick they do that will determine the success of Ole Miss in 2019. They also returned their running back Scotty Phillips, though, the senior running back for the Rebels, who should be able to take the edge off of that passing game a little bit this season. But it really will come down to that passing attack and whether or not Ole Miss can break through and reach the postseason. Defensively, though, they returned 10 starters, and they allowed 36.2 points per game last year, but I expect those numbers to decrease drastically, maybe as much by a touchdown, allowing maybe 30 to 31 points per game in 2019. With Mike MacIntyre at the helm of this defense, expect Ole Miss to greatly improve on that side of the ball. But how will they fare against one of the toughest schedules in the entire nation? A top 25 toughest schedule in 2019. They open up against Memphis on the road, and the last time Ole Miss visited the Tigers, they fell as the number 13 team in the nation, 37-24 at the Liberty Bowl. Now, Memphis this year is once again an American Athletic title contender, bringing back Brady White, having another potent running game, and a defense that could be one of the best yet under Mike Norvell. So expect Memphis to give Ole Miss a huge fight in this game. And I do not like that it's a road game in week 1, bringing in a brand new quarterback, and even though the defense has improved, still needs to go a little bit of ways. 2 brand new coordinators and things like that. So I don't like this game for Ole Miss. But I do think they go on the road and get a very, very close win against the Tigers. I think Ole Miss's defense generates enough plays, maybe gets a couple turnovers over Brady White, forces them into some field goals instead of touchdowns, and then Matt Corral leads a late game-winning drive, gets the win over Memphis in a close one to kick off the season 1-0 for the 3rd time under Matt Luke in his 3 years in Oxford. And if that doesn't build confidence for a young team and some new players and some new pieces, I don't know what will. Ole Miss kicks off the season 1-0 and jumps straight into SEC play with a game against Arkansas. And the Rebels and the Razorbacks have had some classic games over the past few years, including 4 of the past 5 being decided by a combined 10 points. Last year, Ole Miss snapped their 4-game losing streak to Arkansas, winning 37-33 in Little Rock. But the Rebels this year, I think, are not as experienced as the Razorbacks this year. Arkansas will take major strides forward in year 2 under Chad Morris. I think they own the defensive edge. Even though they don't return as many starters, I think they own the defensive edge in year 2 under John Chavis, who is one of the better defensive coordinators in the game. Their quarterback situation is much better this year with either Ben Hicks or Nick Starkel, both transfers from SMU and then Texas A&M. The running game that thrashed Ole Miss in that first half last year, led by Rakeem Boyd and Devwah Whaley, will once again be a strength for the Razorbacks. And I think that the Hogs come on the road and beat Ole Miss in yet another classic between the Razorbacks and the Rebels. But Ole Miss falls to Arkansas in a game that will be decided by no more than a touchdown. They get a huge win against Southeast Louisiana. I wouldn't call it huge. I should say more easy. But huge in terms of just another stat pattern. Another win on the record. It's a stat pattern, and it gets them 1 game closer to the postseason. They're 2-1, going into a very intriguing game against California in Oxford. And I like this game a lot. And I expect this game to be a fairly low-scoring game. Despite Ole Miss boasting powerful offenses in years past, you might not expect that right off the bat in 2019. California, it also should be mentioned, has one of the best secondaries in the entire nation. Not just the Pac-12, but in the entire nation. I think they shut down this Ole Miss passing attack, and it will force Scotty Montgomery to try to win this game on the ground. but the California defense swallows him up too. The California offense is nothing to brag about themselves, but I think they own the slight edge on that side of the ball. And I think the Golden Bears in year 3 under Justin Wilcox gets a quality win over an SEC opponent on the road. Ole Miss drops this game to California. They are 2-2 going into the bulk of SEC play. They face off against Alabama, where they have lost the past 2 to the Crimson Tide by a combined score of 128-10. Last year, they scored on the very first play against the Crimson Tide. And not many people have pictured that as an upset, like a trendy upset pick. But when Ole Miss scored on the first play against that mighty Alabama defense, you couldn't help but wonder, could we see a repeat of some matches back from 2014 and 2015? But unfortunately, they were not able to get the job done there. That was the final score, losing 62-7. This year at Bryant-Denny Stadium, where they were annihilated 66-3 the last time they visited, it could be very similar to that this year. Ole Miss's offense won't be where they need to be yet. Alabama is out for revenge against every single team in 2019. Could be even better than they were in 2018. Tua Tagovailoa has himself a day against his Ole Miss defense. Alabama gets the win. Ole Miss dropping 2-3. And what we're going to do is we're going to switch markers right now. So now, sitting at 2-3, facing off against Vanderbilt at home. Last year was an instant classic between the Commodores and the Rebels. Ole Miss lost 36-29 in overtime. And I know some people consider that a controversial game against the Commodores. But nonetheless, Vandy got that win, and that was huge for them in terms of getting to the postseason. The key for Ole Miss in this game is going to be having to shut down Keyshawn Vaughn, the star running back for Vanderbilt. I like that this game is at home for Ole Miss. If it was at Vandy, much like it was last year, I think I'd be picking the Commodores. But Ole Miss getting this game at home, having close games against Memphis, Arkansas, and maybe even California, there's a chance that Ole Miss could be 4-1 at this point instead of 2-3. But I think they beat Vanderbilt. They're more battle-tested, and in my opinion, more talented than Vandy this year, and they get a win against the Commodores. They are now sitting at 3-3. But then the schedule gets very tough. On the road against Missouri, a team that could very well win 9 or 10 games. They bring in Kelly Bryant from Clemson. He's going to give them an immediate boost on the offensive side of the ball. Not that they need it anymore. We saw how potent their passing attack was the past few years with Drew Lock as quarterback. Missouri will be even better than they were in 2018. Ole Miss falls to the Tigers on the road. They then get Texas A&M at home. And Ole Miss has usually been able to hang around with the Aggies. But this year, Texas A&M has, once again, a much better team than they were in 2018. Unfortunately, you might not be able to see that because if you thought Ole Miss's schedule was tough, go take a look at Texas A&M's. They have one of the top 5 toughest schedules in the entire nation. But Kellen Mond is back at quarterback. He returns a great crew of wide receivers. And even though their defense still has some questions, by October 19th, I expect those to be all but answered when you've got Jimbo Fisher as your head coach. Even though this game is in Oxford, A&M comes on the road. They need every win they can get as well, as they have road games against Clemson, Georgia, and LSU, as well as a home date against Alabama. A&M comes on the road and beats an Ole Miss team that's just not up to par with the Aggies, and Ole Miss takes yet another loss. They then get a bye week on October 26th before they face off against Auburn on the road. And once again, you've seen some classic games between the Rebels and the Tigers in years past. I mean, I can remember back in 2014, 2015, when these teams were ranked in the top 5 facing off against one another. But this Auburn team has one of the best defensive lines in the entire nation. And when they're going up against a team that struggles up on the offensive line, much like I think Ole Miss will this year, much like I think Arkansas will this year, it's bad news for those offenses. This Auburn defensive line will annihilate the Ole Miss offensive line, create havoc in the backfield for Matt Corral and Scotty Montgomery. I don't expect Ole Miss to put up many points against the Tigers, even though they're coming off a bye. This game is on the road. The Auburn defense steps it up. They have certainly answered any quarterback questions they have, whether it's Joey Gatewood or Bo Nix, and the Tigers beat Ole Miss at home. The Rebels taking yet another loss to Auburn. They get an easy win over New Mexico State. No worries there. So now they're sitting with 4 wins. Going to have to win the remaining 2 games if they want to go bowling for the first time since 2015. Unfortunately, one of those games is against LSU. And as we all know, the Tigers will boast one of the best secondaries, like California, in the entire nation. Arguably the best secondary in the entire SEC. We've seen, once again, some classics between the Tigers and the Rebels in recent years, but it will not be a classic this season. Even though Ole Miss gets to host LSU and then host, they have to go on the road to Mississippi State, but even though they get to host LSU this season, I don't see any way that Ole Miss pulls off this upset. The offense simply is not there, and this is not just an average defense they're going up against. So even if the offense was elite, they would still struggle against this LSU defense. And LSU's offense is finally competent. It's finally been put together. They've got Joe Burrow. They've got those wide receivers back. LSU could easily win 10 games this year, maybe more. They're not just an SEC title contender. They're a national title contender. And despite Ole Miss hosting this game, LSU comes on the road and beats the Rebels. That puts them out of bowl consideration. But luckily for them, they get a bye week going into that road game against Mississippi State. And of course, when you get to the rivalry games, we know that you just throw records out the window. Records simply do not matter when it comes to rivalry games. Ole Miss, coming off this week of rest, will greatly benefit them in preparation for the Egg Bowl. And Mississippi State is nothing to brag about this year. They're not going to be as good as they were, I thought, last year, even though it was a disappointing 2018 for them. They will have questions to answer themselves, including at the quarterback position. Ole Miss has won 3 of the past 5 against the Bulldogs, but they will not beat the Bulldogs this year. They fell 35-3 to Mississippi State. This game will be closer in 2019, but not enough to be a Bulldogs team that will have a solid quarterback, whether it's at Keaton Thompson or Tommy Stevens, and a defense that, yes, lost a lot to the NFL, yes, has some questions, but by this point, by Thanksgiving night, we'll have worked things out. Mississippi State still a 7 or 8 win team in 2019 in year 2 under Joe Moorhead, and they get another win in the Egg Bowl over their heated rivals. And Ole Miss drops this game to finish the season 4-8. And a lot of people will be quick to disagree with that. But tell me where you see Ole Miss going bowling. Look at the schedule. Maybe they snag a win. Their best chance, in my opinion, of getting to a bowl game is by beating Arkansas and California. They win those 2 games, and they will go to the postseason. But besides that, I don't see any other games here that just shout out to me as a potential upset or a potential win. Maybe Mississippi State just because of the rivalry factor. But Ole Miss's best chance of getting to a bowl game is winning these 4 games we have mentioned and then winning the 2 home games against Arkansas and California. And I think they are more likely to beat Arkansas than they are in the Golden Bears. Matt Luke has this team going in the right direction. I know it doesn't sound like that, going from 6 wins in year 1, 5 last year, and now 4 this year. He will certainly be on the hot seat going into 2020. But if he retains his offensive and defensive coordinators in Rodriguez and MacIntyre and then gets everybody back that he needs in 2020, Ole Miss will, without a doubt, my opinion, be going to the postseason for the first time since 2015 in 2020. Just not going to come in 2019. So guys, as always, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Go check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Gridiron Expert, and go check out our official website, thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for our newsletter and sign up for our expert picks. For just $30, you receive every single one of our 2019 college football spread picks, including the postseason. And I can promise you that it's a deal you do not want to pass up. So join our team, sign up today only at thegridironexpert.com. And guys, as always, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.